And this mic friggin' pull my shirt down.
Jeff would why don't you clip it like I have? Because your shirt's thin enough.
Oh, good call, yeah.
There, Jeff. Now nobody can see your chest flaps.
I'd love to see it.
Except for me. Fluffy. Hello everyone, welcome back to Foster the Meeple, a channel all about
board games.
And
board games about books.
Exactly. Today we are talking about board games for book lovers. I don't know if anybody knew this. I know some of you did. But before Jeff and I started here in the world of board games, we had a YouTube channel about books, okay? It was called Ermagerd Burks. And another thing...
Now everyone's going to go.
Well, I changed the name.
Okay.
So people can't find it as easily. Mwahaha, because we had perfect intentions of using the other channel for other things. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe someday. Maybe someday, though. You never know. Also, in our Discord, which if you're not in, you probably should be, we just started a book club. Now, the book club is bumping. There's like over 40 people in it, and we are choosing a different book every month, reading it together, and we set the book 6 months. So anyways, I've just been thinking a lot about board gamers and books because it's just been live and poppin' in the Discord with book club.
What book are you currently reading?
We are currently reading Starling House. It's like a gothic, haunted house, love story. Like our whole thing is that we are going to read romantasy books, but there's so many people in the book club that we're just reading a bunch of stuff. Everything's got a little hint of love in it. Perfect for February, actually. Happy almost Valentine's Day, peeps. Actually, I think we've already missed Valentine's Day. Happy past Valentine's Day, friends. Okay, anyways, today's video is about books that we want to recommend for book lovers, and we have quite a few categories. One category is board games that are based on books. One is board games that are more story-based, and then the other category is just for fun, things that we think book people might find fun. We're book people, we find them fun.
You didn't even ask me what I was reading.
What are you reading? You asked what the book club was reading. You're not even in book club.
No, I said, what are you reading?
Oh, yeah, Starling House. What are you reading?
I'm reading Oathsworn, which is the third book.
Oathsworn is a board game.
Also a book.
Oh,
I think. Now
I thought
you're
it
making.
was Oathbringer.
Oh, you might be right.
I think I am. I know your book's better than you do, sucker.
It is Oathbringer. I am currently reading the third book in the Stormlight Archive series called Oathbringer.
Yes. It's one of Jeff's favorite series. He's read it. Now this is your third time.
I've read the first two books 3 times. This is my second reading of Oathbringer. And I haven't read Rhythm of War yet.
Which is the newest one?
I think. He might be on 5 now.
Who knows? That man pumps out the books. So, let's just get started, Jeff. Maybe that's a good segue. Actually, the first category is board games based on books. And one of the games that we're going to recommend is based off of Brandon Sanderson, happens to be that same series, and that is Call to Adventure, Stormlight Archives. But there's also just regular Call to Adventure, and you can get the Name of the Wind expansion, which is one of both of our favorite books.
Call to Adventure is a card-based narration game where you are going to be building out a story path for your character, and that story path is kind of like, again, all card-based, but you're kind of like going on quests. You might be fighting baddies. There's a little bit of like rolling these runes to allow you to accomplish or fail certain things, and there's kind of this light and dark track. It's very story driven. It's very like RPG-esque in a board game.
Exactly, and like I mentioned, they have one based off of the Stormlight Archive series, one based off of Name of the Wind, which is a Patrick Rothfuss Kingkiller Chronicles series. So if you're into high fantasy and you like the development of a story, I think these games are really great for that.
Yeah, and they're not overly complicated rule sets. It's just playing out cards, basically.
Exactly. And Stormlight Archives is a standalone if you'd like to start there.
Yep.
Next up, we have none other than games based around Alice in Wonderland. Now, there's a ton, but there are two in particular that obviously come to mind for us. The first being Paint the Roses, which is a deduction-style game, a cooperative deduction-style game, where you are in the Queen of Hearts garden and you are trying to get people to guess the symbols that you have on your card. So there's symbols, and then there's also colors, and there's easy, medium, and hard. So you are doing that by placing out tiles on this board that have different colors and symbols on them, which are the symbols from a card. Clubs, spades, diamonds, and hearts, of course. And you are placing out your little cubes to try and give people information about what you have in your hand. The game continues until you either win or the Queen of Hearts chops your head off. It's just what it is.
Which is probably going to be the outcome.
Yes. This is also on Board Game Arena if you'd like to try it for free. But that's Alice in Wonderland theme. And then the other one, of course, is Wonderland's War, which to me is just like a fully immersive Alice in Wonderland game. It has every aspect of Alice in Wonderland in it. This is a bag building combat style game, area control combat style game, where you are in Wonderland and the board has multiple sections from Wonderland. Tuggly Woods, the Pool of Tears, a bunch of different spots, and you are going around having a little tea party, as you do in Wonderland, trying to gain different chips to add into your bag, or possibly to recruit Wonderlandians to your side to help you fight. So there's the tea party, and then you go into the battle phase, where anybody who's in any section of Wonderland is going to fight it out for control. That's basically the game. You're pulling out chips, and that's how you fight. You're like, which is one of my favorite things. There's so many other aspects of it, but like if you are looking for a fully immersive Alice in Wonderland game, this one ticks all the boxes. Next up, we have The Reckoners, which is another Brandon Sanderson book. Jeff, Reckoners.
Yeah, so the Reckoners board game is based off the similarly named Reckoners series of books from Brandon Sanderson. In Reckoners, you're going to be facing a bunch of epics, and these epics in this world are people with supernatural abilities. Think superheroes.
They're
anti-heroes. And then your job is to basically go around the city defeating the epics and their little minions with the end goal of eventually fighting Steelheart, who's like the leader. They all have some asymmetrical like little abilities that you need to overcome. But ultimately in this game, you're powering yourself up. You're trying to mitigate an overflow of minions getting on the board and that sort of thing. There's some dice chucking and that sort of thing. Very, very difficult, but very thematic to the Reckoners series of books.
Next up on the list, we're just going to throw out anything that's based on Lord of the Rings. There are so many options for this. You have Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation, Lord of the Rings, Journeys of Middle-earth. You have War of the Ring.
I just want to throw out, like, I think War of the Ring is probably
Lord of the Ring is a card game.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I just want to throw out that War of the Ring is probably the one that's going to satiate the feeling of an actual Lord of the Rings experience, you know, but considering it's a big boy, takes a long time, and has some rules overhead. Take that for what it's worth.
I would say, of all of them, I would probably recommend Lord of the Rings, Journeys of Middle-earth the most, because it is kind of, you're playing through a story, it's cooperative, it's maybe a little bit more approachable than something like War of the Ring, and easier to find, because War of the Ring and Lord of the Rings, A Confrontation, not so easy to find, but Journeys of Middle-earth, you are playing through Lord of the Rings, and you're doing a journey through Middle-earth as a band of brothers, basically, trying to get through and defeat Sauron. So, it's also kind of like a story-based game, which is nice. Next, we have Dune. There's so many board games based on the Dune series. There's one just called straight up Dune. But the most popular one, of course, is Dune Imperium. I haven't read Dune. You have.
Yeah, so Dune Imperium is similar to the original book. I've only read the first book in the Dune series. I haven't read any others. But you are fighting for influence and power on Arrakis, trying to take advantage of the worms, the spice, and that sort of thing, and ultimately just trying to earn victory points, but within the theme of the Dune world. It's a deck builder, so a lot of the cards have the familiar characters, recognize some of the card art and that sort of thing, but it's all based in the Dune world.
Yes. Another one is Red Rising from Stonemaier Games. Red Rising is a young adult series. I think it's more than a trilogy, which I've read the first book. And this is a board game based off a very popular card game called Fantasy Realms, where essentially you are just trying to optimize the cards in your hand, but this game adds a little bit more meat to it. All of the characters, all of the cards are characters from the Red Rising series, which has different factions. So there's the pink faction, the gold faction, the brown faction, the white faction. All is very thematic to how it is in the book, because each faction plays a different role. You are also trying to go up kind of like different tracks almost, but not really. You're like collecting different things until you reach the end game objective. But if you enjoy Red Rising by Pierce Brown, it's definitely one to check out. Very quickly, Game of Thrones, lots of board games. Battle of Westeros, Game of Thrones, the board game, which is the one that I would definitely recommend because it just feels like you're playing out the book.
Yep.
Okay, it's like a war battle style game with negotiation a little bit because you're trying to like maybe I won't attack you if you won't do this. Very thematic.
Yep.
I also want to shout out Jekyll versus Hyde if you're into the classics. It's a trick-taking game.
Yep.
You know more about that one.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde is a 1v1 trick-taking game with a tug-of-war mechanic to it, or mechanism. So depending on how many tricks you win, with some nuance to it, which I won't get into, but basically you're trying to you're either representing Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde, and you're trying to pull the influence to that side of the board in order to win.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a unique trick taker. Like the Trump suit kind of changes around and stuff. It's pretty cool. And last but not least on this section, I want to talk about Black Sonata, which isn't directly based off of a book, but Black Sonata is based off of like Shakespeare and the Dark Lady. It is a solo only deduction game, which is really cool. You are searching the city of London in order to find the Dark Lady, who is leaving clues as she kind of goes along. So if you're into Shakespeare, this one is kind of dripping with like Shakespeare language and themes and icons and like all of that stuff. So it's very, very good.
I want to mention one more just quickly. We haven't played it, but it's based off of a really popular series, so I'm sure it's going to come up in the comments, and that's the Pillars of the Earth, which is a Ken Follett book. I do think there's another board game. I can't remember the book name, but there's another one in this series as well. I think there's two based off of Ken Follett books. I just want to mention them because I know people are going to be like mentioning them, but we haven't played them.
There are probably so many others also that we haven't mentioned, but we want to talk about just a few. Well, there's a lot.
A few that we've played
and some that we know about. Played, next up, category is story-based books. So if you're a book lover, what do you love?
Stories.
Exactly. That's why you read. We love stories.
I almost said books.
Books, obviously. So we have a few recommendations for board games that are like fully like story. That's kind of like what drives them. The first one is a threefer because they're all from the same publisher, and that's Plaid Hat Games. We have two from the Crossroads series and then one which is an intro kind of campaign game. So there's Freelancers and Forgotten Waters. One is pirate themed, one is fantasy, RPG, mercenary, freelancer themed. Both you are playing out through a story as a character, making decisions as you go along. It also has an app which reads to you and has music. It's silly, it's fun, it's approachable, both of them. So realistically, pick which one you prefer the theme, or play one and then play the other, because they are both, they'll give you moments where you laugh out loud, and it just builds really good memories. Familiar Tales is essentially like you're playing through a story that's almost like a Disney princess story, where this baby princess gets rescued from like an evil warlock by this trope of like,
merry misfits.
Exactly. So there's like a fairy, and there's a fox, and there's
golem.
A frog, and there's a golem. And so they are carrying this child, trying to get her back home throughout her life as she grows up, and there's just story intertwined throughout all of it. Next up is Artisans of Splendent Vale. Jeff?
Yeah, Artisans of Splendent Vale is as story-driven of a board game that I've ever played.
It literally comes with 4 books.
I would say the majority of this game is storytelling between the characters.
Yes.
Each character comes with basically a novel that you are going to be reading to each other, kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure kind of cooperative experience.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little bit of gameplay. At certain situations, you're going to do what's like an event battle or a boss battle, which is pretty light and easygoing. The main driver of the game is actually reading out of the book, though. So if you're looking for like some sort of cooperative, narrative, story-driven game that you can experience with friends, this would be one. And it's very, very inclusive. Very inclusive.
Very pretty. It gives cozy vibes.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. It's one you could just... I feel like you don't even have to really be a board gamer to enjoy it. It's very, again, book-driven.
Next on the list is called Ela and Something Shiny, or Isla and Something Shiny. I don't know how to pronounce it. Everybody says it differently. This is a solo-only campaign game where you are playing out the story of a young bunny who is trying to find the something shiny that is on top of the mountain. You are going with... I'll just call her Isla. You're going with Isla as she grows from baby bunny to adult bunny through her journey, making decisions based on cards and events that come up. It is extremely approachable, so if you're new to board games, this is one that's great. If you're a reader, most likely you probably like doing solo activities. This is a solo board game, so I would highly recommend. It's very cute and very story-driven. Next, I want to shout out just a couple. Mansions of Madness, which is also Lovecraftian. So if you're into books, you might know about Lovecraft. Destinies, and any kind of game that is within that realm. So Mansions of Madness is Lovecraftian. It's a little bit more intense.
Yeah, I'd say a little bit more gamey than some of the other ones.
Exactly. Whereas Destinies is also like you're playing out a story, making decisions, and it has an app that's reading the story.
Very app-driven.
Very app-driven and a bit more approachable.
Yeah, approachable, nice dice, cool story. Yep.
And I think people can relate to that. And there is another one coming out called The Dark Quarter, which is based in like New Orleans, like vampire-esque. So that's not out yet, but it will be eventually. And then 2 more on this list, Robin Hood.
Robin Hood is
The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Very story-driven game that actually I think is super approachable for book readers that maybe have never played a board game before, because the game teaches you as you're kind of playing it.
Yes.
It's very approachable. It's very easy to open the box and start playing. There's a really beautiful leather-bound rule book that comes with the game, but the rule book is basically just stories. And you're going to be choosing different options. You're playing as Robin Hood. I don't want to spoil anything, there's new characters that will be instilled into the game depending on options that you pick, but basically you're doing very Robin Hood-esque things in Nottingham, depending on the scenarios that you go through.
Everybody knows the story of Robin Hood. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. Bada bing.
Yep.
Bada boom. Last on this list is an RPG, but it's an RPG, well, all RPGs, you're playing a character out in a story. But for me, I find this one a little bit more...
It's on rails.
It's on rails. This is Alice is Missing. And what's really interesting about this game is you're playing out a story where Alice has gone missing. That's not a spoiler, it's literally the title of the game. And everybody plays a character in Alice's life trying to figure out, where did Alice go? What happened to Alice? But it's all played out through text messages. So you don't actually talk to each other. You are just writing text messages back and forth to each other.
Maybe to the group, maybe to one person.
Maybe to one person. My favorite part about this game is at the very beginning, everybody records a voicemail to Alice as the character that you're playing. Like, you have a character and a motive and like a personality almost. And then at the very end of the game, all of the voicemails gets played, and it's just really cool experience. And for me, as someone who's, not as good at RPGs and like acting things out, to do it in text was so much more approachable. So last but not least, the category is just for fun. You're a book lover? Amazing. You might like these. The first game is called Ex Libris. That game is about building out a library. What book lover doesn't love a library? I haven't met one. But basically, the mayor of this town is saying, you need to build out the best library. You are going to be going to different locations, picking up different book cards and trying to organize your library from A to Z. But there's a bunch of different A's with different numbers, and you have to try and get things in order. And then there's also banned books that you don't want in your library. And then there's also favorite books that you want more of in your library. It's just a very, very booky board game.
Yes, very.
And I love it. Next up, I think, is just fun. If you like to read newspapers, that's Fit to Print.
Fit to Print is a tile placement game where you're on a timer and you're going to be collecting a bunch of different newspaper pieces that you need to include on your personal tableau, which is ultimately a grid of space for your newspaper. And you're going to be grabbing advertisements, you're going to be grabbing articles, you're going to be grabbing
photos,
pictures, etc. There's a bunch of placement rules where two similar things can't be next to each other. It's just chaotic kind of fun. If you like tactile type feeling of games and you like the theme, I think it's one worth trying.
If you've ever wanted to work at a newspaper and feel the chaos that I feel like it would be, where you're like, layout, print, and then you have to stop, and it's just really fast and really fun. The next one is Similo. So Similo is like kind of like a deduction style game, but there's a bunch of different sets, many of which are kind of related to things you might read about, like myths or fables.
Yep.
There's Lord of the Rings, there's Harry Potter, there's a bunch of different ones. You can mix and match them, you can do all of these different things, but essentially there's a grid of cards laid out on a board or on the table, and there is somebody who's giving you clues, who's trying to get you to guess what the thing that they have in their hand or what they saw was it by telling you what is similar or dissimilar on the board. Extremely approachable. You could play it with anyone, and you pick the theme that works best for you.
Yep.
Also, if you are a fan of history books, you like history? Well, why not try something like Memoir 44 or Undaunted? Jeff, do you want to give a quick blog about those?
There's tons of history-themed board games, obviously, that exist. Others being heavier, like war games and that sort of thing. So depending on what you're into, take that for what it is. But Memoir 44 and Undaunted, I think, are really good entry points into war-based, war-themed games. Memoir 44 is based off the Command and Color system, where it's a bunch of dice chucking randomness. So it's really easy to play. You play a card, and then you activate the characters that are in that section of the board. The board's broken down by 3 sections. Depending on the card you play, you're going to activate and roll dice for the troops that are in that area. Very approachable, very easy. You do not need to be a board gamer in order to get that game and play it. Undaunted, probably a little bit more complex, but not quite as bad, because the rulebook is very, very good in Undaunted, but it is a deck builder. Normandy is a World War II themed entry point. I think that would be good for most people, but very thematic to what events existed in World War II. All have scenarios in the game that you can play through.
Yes, and very approachable. So if you're into like reading about history and stuff like that, it
tons of flavor text.
Tons of flavor text. Last one on this list is a game that we actually haven't played, but it has been sitting on our shelves for years, maybe one of the longest, and that's called Bring Your Own Book.
Yep.
Now, in Bring Your Own Book, this is like the perfect game for book lovers, because everybody is going to grab a book off of the shelf, and this game is going to tell you to read find this page, read this word, and you're basically building out like this weird story to share with other people. So like you can do this really fun. Someone grab like a medical textbook, someone grab a fantasy book, someone grab a romance, and like you're going to be building out this very strange story. But this is a perfect game to have if you have a ton of books and you have other friends that are book lovers to play. Don't ask me why we haven't played it yet. There's been so many times when we're like, we should play that. Why don't we play it? We just got to do it.
I have one more.
Ooh.
Spicy take.
Spicy.
I just thought of it. What do book lovers like doing, just like board game collectors like doing?
Buying books.
And doing what with them?
Putting them on their shelves.
And organizing them.
Yes.
Do you know what's another game where you do that?
My Shelfie.
My Shelfie.
That was on my short list. Talk about it, yeah.
My Shelfie is a kind of similar game to Connect 4.
Yes.
It's got a similar dynamic, a similar little drop tile piece that you're playing at. It's very, very simple, very approachable for new gamers, and very satisfying to put all your
good.
little books and your cats and your
Trinkets.
trinkets on your shelf in order to score victory points.
It's so good, and there are a bunch of these games that you can try out for free on Board Game Arena. We have no association with Board Game Arena. I wish.
I just think it's a really good resource.
It's a really great resource. So throughout the video, you probably see, I'll put BGA pop up so that you can see what you can try out for free.
Yep.
Okay. I also want to give just an honorable mention, and it's an honorable mention because I work for this company. But what I want to say is I want to suggest graphic novel adventures. There happens to be one right in front of me. This is literally like a story where you're going through and solving different things, but it's a game within a storybook. And I mention it because I had never heard of graphic novel adventures before I started with the company, and I don't think a lot of people know about them. So could be a good place to start as well. And it was sitting right in front of me.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so this one is Sherlock. There's so many different themes. There's like,
I've never actually looked through this.
Yeah, I've done this one. And it's like you're trying to, in the
I
Sherlock
see.
ones, you're trying, yeah.
It's like choose your own adventure, kind of?
Exactly, and it's like find this number, and then you flip back to another page, and there's so many. That's another one, 2070. But anyways, that's just a shout out, not a shameless plug. I just thought people should know about it. Anyways, those are some of our recommendations for board games for book lovers. If you have more suggestions, throw them in the comments below so people can explore them. We'd love to hear about them because obviously we ourselves are book lovers.
Indeed.
But that is everything that we have for you today. Now, if you're interested in buying board games like any of the many we mentioned today, you should first start by checking your friendly local gaming store. And for us, that is...
The Boardroom Game Cafe.
Heck yeah. Do you like snacks?
I do.
Amazing. Where do people get snacks?
Munch Pack.
Munch Pack. Book lovers and board gamers. Everybody likes to eat snacks.
It's true.
And if you like what you see...
Please subscribe.
We hope to see you again soon. And now we say goodbye. Goodbye!
Later it is.
Yoo-hoo! Remember that song, Jeff?
Nope.
These are the moments I've waited all my life. Da, 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 da. Could not ask for more. Are we even?
I feel like that's a song you made up.
No, it isn't. Come on over. Good?
Sure.
Okay.
I am currently reading the third book in the I am currently reading the third book. What is happening?
I don't know. You have, I know that there, nope, that's Game of Thrones. Man, we powered through that. There are so many, though. Jeff?
Hey.
Some might call us professionals.
We did it.
We did it. Hey, proud of you. Look at us. Who would have thought? Not me.